Hello and welcome to Pointed Logic Tarot. This is going to be a fun one. I have been looking forward to filming this for ages, but needed to finish the appropriate research and get the appropriate resources, as well as have a deck to represent each century. Welcome to my attempt at Tarot by the Century. And we're going to go through a walkthrough of 9 different centuries in playing card evolution. I want to start with a couple of caveats. This is not history of playing cards. There are many incredible lineages of playing cards across the globe. This is just focusing on the evolution of cards that have led to tarot and to where tarot is today. So we're not going to be talking about other very incredible, beautiful decks such as Hanafuda from Japan or Loteria from Spain, but then really evolved in Mexico. We're just going to talk about how playing cards got started, how they made their way to Europe, how they evolved into 5 suits, and then where tarot went from there. I'm going to do my best to share what I know, but I really want to stress that I may be inaccurate in some places or make some mistakes, so please offer corrections in the comments. And I want to share that I was inspired to do this by a few folks that their videos have really helped me dig into the history of tarot. Firstly, it would be Marilyn from Tarot Clarity. It would be Kelly at The Truth and Story. And actually, Kelly did a video similar to this, which is sort of where I got the idea and where I even learned how far back tarot went, or the connections you can find all the way back. And then more recently, I've really loved Taproot Tarot's channel because of the pragmatic and accuracy and history-seeking, more secular view of tarot and historic decks. So you should go check all 3 of those channels out. Of course, I will link them. Take a look. And shout out, thank you to all the folks who have done all the research, who've done all these deck creations and restorations and paved the way for us to enjoy and also to learn and understand the history of tarot. So I'm going to move all my friends out of the way here, and we're going to rewind. Get in your time machine and head all the way back to the 1200s. I am going to use centuries and hundreds interchangeably, more or less, but I do want to acknowledge that the difference between a century and the like for example, the difference between the 19th century and the 1800s is a year, right? So bear with me. We're going to start back in the 13th century, where the estimation is that money-suited playing cards came from China first and traveled along the Silk Road to many places, including Egypt. So what I have here, and actually in my lineup, this is the only facsimile deck. Something that I should clarify is that most of the decks I own, for example, pretty much all of these are all either restorations or recreations of a historic deck. So they're not scans. A facsimile is when you have the deck as it exists now from a museum or what have you, scanned in card by card with no alteration. I just typically prefer cleaned up lines, and I like creative takes. So I don't really have a lot of facsimiles. I only have this one, and then I only have one tarot facsimile that I just got, which I will talk about when we get to that century. But all this to say, these are Scene 1 playing cards from China. This particular facsimile is not from the 1200s because paper is challenged to survive that long. But it is similar to what would have been printed and shared around back then. I bought this deck used on eBay. It comes with a little, just a tiny fold out that says, this set of cards printed in 2004. It's a reproduction of the original found in the collection of the Fournier cards, Museum in Alava, owned by Exma and situated in Vitoria-Gasteiz, Spain. Please excuse my terrible pronunciation throughout the video. So, these are very small. Oh, do I have them upside down? My apologies. Sometimes they're called stick cards. And what we have is suits that are money themed and based on multiples. So you have coins, and then you have strings of coins, and then you have myriads of strings of coins. And then I think this one might be a deck with only 3 suits, and then there would be a 4th suit added of tens of myriads. So for example, this is the 8 of coins. This, I believe, is the 7 of strings of coins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think that's how you sort of count it. And as you can see, the coins, because they had holes in them, were kept on strings to travel with. And then myriads is more than that, which in this deck, I think might be represented by these people, which in my research were folk hero characters. I went on a long rabbit hole exploring this deck, but it was quite a while ago. So I will go back through my research and share a bunch of resources down below for you all to take a look at. I think also there are cards that are jokers. I think this is one of them. And it varies depending on the region and style of the game, just like with tarot decks and playing cards everywhere. But so these are made on some of the first paper and traveled along trade routes. Again, this particular deck is a facsimile from a deck in a later century. Let me actually check my stuff here. This particular deck's from the 19th century, but similar to what was some of the very first decks of cards. And the Museum of Alava has a ton of really cool historic facsimile decks. And like I said, I got mine on eBay. There are a few that you can find. So now we're going to travel from China to Egypt. from the 13th century to the 14th century. So the 1300s. This is a little bit, again, early history is more challenging to sort of sort out specific dates, but as you see me go through the video, you'll see how I get more exact with the dates of the decks that I have. Mamluk playing cards are the link between early cards from Asia to the start of playing cards in Europe. Named after the Mamluk Sultanate that was in Egypt and expanded into Italy and areas around it. The Sultanate itself existed from 1250 up to 1517. So it's many centuries worth of evolution of cards. So this particular Mamluk deck is a little bit, again, because of trying to find stuff really old is harder to find. This is a restoration done by Trey's Art. Again, I'll link their website. And I got this one off Kickstarter. And it's a little bit later, more ornate version. But they sell one that was found, I think, in a book binding that was slightly less ornate. And I'll show pictures of that. Here's the information. The Game of Kings and Deputies. So you'll see this one is the Topkapi Type 1 deck, and it's 1500 approximately. So although I'm talking about the 1300s here, these cards have evolved and spanned many centuries. And the Mamluk Empire, or the Sultanate, did also expand many centuries. But it's estimated that they got introduced to cards in the 14th century. This is like a little key that came with it to tell you all of the different names of each card because they're not on the cards, which is pretty rad. And one of my favorite things about this deck is the handout that sort of explains the evolution of playing cards. So like I said, Mamluk cards are commonly accepted to be the link between earlier cards from Asia and playing cards in Europe. There are similarities between the suit systems, which I'm going to talk about. So there's the coin suit, the strings of coins, and if you notice, here's a picture of an example of a money-suited playing card, similar to what I just showed. And then this is an image of one of the originals of this Mamluk deck. And then we have the myriad, which means 10,000. And then there's the Chinese suit of Shi for 10, tens of myriads. Here's another image of the money-suited cards. And here's an image of one of the more simplistic or like minimal versions of Mamluk cards that was found. This one's called the Moorish deck, an uncut sheet of simple playing cards from the early 15th century. The deck is thought to have been produced in Spain. The design shows many similarities in general design with the Topkapi deck. And then one of my favorite things, and I'll also put an image on the screen in a moment of some like higher resolution depictions of the evolution of suits. It shows the money suits, the Mamluk suits, and then what we've sort of been familiar as these classic Italian suits, which, you know, when people talk about Marseille French decks, they are talking about Italian suits because the scimitar makes it as a curved sword in the Italian suits. And then Spanish suits are very similar, but evolved into the German and Swiss suits. And the French suits that we know today are inspired by the German suits. There's one more thing I wanted to talk about before we look at these cards. So this is something I wanted to comment on when I was talking about how I typically prefer restorations or recreations. There's something really special about the communication between artists across centuries. You'll also see this when we get to the tarot of Geoffroy and Salas, where it's 3 different artists inspiring each other to then create something that culminates in what we have available to us today. So this says, this deck is a recreation from scratch that makes use of original design principles such as symmetry, circle-based forms, etc. Here's an example of the original and the restoration. The reconstruction doesn't try to faithfully recreate every single element, but rather seeks to reflect the main design ideas in a consistent and authentic way. It is meant to look like the cards that Mamluk people might have produced had they had access to modern technology, such as vector graphics software or modern printing. Okay, that was a lot of yammering, but let me show you some of these very beautiful suits. So, this deck's suits are scimitars, polo sticks, which is what became wands. Scimitars became swords. Cups stayed cups. And then coins stayed coins. And looks like I had this in order. I have red with this deck, but I put it back in order for some reason. I was playing solitaire with this to try and better memorize and get to know the suits. So if you'll notice, this is going in reverse. So this is the king. And then there's third deputy, second deputy, and first deputy. And then this is the 10. And then we're going backwards here. These are the polo sticks. Which I love the ornate dragon looking design. Here's the ace. Okay, and then these are the coins. So this is the king, third deputy, second deputy, first deputy, 10, 9, and then onward down. And then we get to the ace. And then we have, again, the king, third deputy, second, first, and then 10 down to ace of scimitars. It's very beautiful. I feel extremely lucky to have found this because I learned about Mamluk ducks after the initial Kickstarter of this, and then the artist made a second printing. So this is the second edition. Ulrich Kaltenborn Trace Art. Okay, let's continue on. We now make our way to a familiar century, which is the 15th century. This is where we saw the first tarot decks. The oldest known decks are 3 decks from the Viscontis. We've got the Visconti di Madrone, which is the one I have here. The other 2 being the Brambilla and the Sforza. There's a little bit of uncertainty between which one was first, but created at some point between 1442 and 1447. So this is the oldest surviving deck, but potentially not the first style of deck, because this is like a fancy royals deck. And we have other decks, but they are older than this, or like not older, later than this, as far as the oldest surviving ones that we have, as far as more simple art, mass produced for the public. So the oldest decks we have are these. There is some assumption that they started with royalty and then made their way to the masses, but it could be that the ones that survived again this far back are the ornate gold-plated, silver-plated paintings that were hung on the walls of royalty. So, as you can see, this particular, this is a Lo Scarabeo restoration where they recreated the missing cards and then added elements to make it look like it's gold and silver. This is the deck with a 5th suit of trumps, or triumphs, which is why it's called Trionfi. This is Italian, from the 1400s, like I said. And this is a pretty well-known one. I like this card a lot. This is, wait, let me pull up the little book. I think this is, it's one of the virtues. And I really enjoy it. Charity, maybe? It might be Charity. Yeah. And I like this one because Charity is seen with a cup, breastfeeding a baby, and stepping on a king. I love that. And it's interesting how this particular deck pokes fun at royalty. Here's the Fool. This has male knights and female knights. And it has a suit of arrows, which are the wands. And then it has swords, coins, and cups. This is the Emperor. The coins are really cool and sort of how the deck was dated and known to be part of the Visconti family with their crests and stuff. And it's thought that the World card is the penultimate card in the Triumphs, and that the final card is Judgment. So here's Judgment. Let me find the World card to show. And of the 3 Visconti decks that are surviving, the Brambilla is, or not the Brambilla, the Madrone, this one, is my personal favorite. There are certain cards I don't like in the Sforza, with the like person clubbing a lion, for example. Here's the World card. And I think it had a different name. Fame. Yeah. So this one's really cool. I really enjoyed this one. And that's the example I have for the 15th century when tarot got started. I will link some really great information on the history of how Mamluk cards made their way into Italy, because I feel like it's glossed over. I'm not going super deep into any of these centuries in particular here, but there's an incredible podcast with a researcher that talks about the Mamluk Empire and its expansion and the influence it had on Europe. Okay, this is one of my favorite centuries to talk about. And this is the 16th century, the 1500s. This is when we have evidence of tarot available to the public, such as the new Rosenwald tarot is one of the most famous ones. I'll put a picture up. As I said, paper doesn't survive preservation very well, and a lot of these decks, like that were early clues for us, were found in bookbinding. So like the designs of the deck, the paper reused, or uncut sheets reused in books, and then the book survived. I had a really hard time deciding what deck from this century that I wanted to own myself, because a lot of them are frankly kind of crude, and it was just I wasn't certain. There's a lot of interesting things out and about though, so I will put some other images up. But the deck I decided to get, again, it's special because it's 3 different artists. I have here the Tarot of Geoffroy and Salas from 1557, approximately. And the information I'm going to read to you is from the back here. Here's the image. Again, this is a restoration. So in Germany, 1544, Virgil Salas created a deck of playing cards. He designed suits of lions, parrots, monkeys, and peacocks. But then in France of 1557, Catalin Geoffroy copied the Virgil Salas deck as the minor arcana for a full tarot deck. So these majors are Geoffroy's. And something useful to note, in the corner, the creator of this deck, Ella Mortimer, put the little initials of which artist is from which on these cards. So you know which card this was made by, if it was made by Geoffroy or if it was made by Salas. The tarot deck of Catalin Geoffroy survives in a fragmentary state with about half the cards surviving, but the original playing cards of Virgil Salas are complete, along with a vast collection of Salas's other work. So this deck is a recreation, the surviving cards faithfully copied, and then the deck completed by cards and images from Virgil Salas. The cards have new line art, have been hand-colored with watercolor pencils in a modern style. So shout out Ella Mortimer for just an extremely creative restoration. Ella also has a couple of other decks on GameCrafter, which is where I got this one, including a modern take on the Rosenwald Tarot, like I mentioned, and then a really interesting deck that I'm not remembering the name of that shows things like ink and feathers, because it's all about paper. So as we go through here, we're looking at the majors. I recently put this deck back in order, and you'll see the initials are typically Catalin Geoffroy. Now, first off, apologies to all French speakers. I listened to so many pronunciations of this name to try and figure out what was closest and what I could, like my attempt at saying it appropriately. Literally, if I speak it like an American, I would say Caitlin Geoffroy. And that's kind of what I thought it was. But I heard some people say Catalin Jeffrey or Caitlin Jeffrey. So I went on a hunt. And the closest thing I can say to what I think is accurate is Catalin Geoffroy. So that's what I'm going with. Come at me. I don't mind. I'm trying. So now, for example, this card has the initials of Virgil Salis because it was a lost triumph card, a lost major from Geoffroy's deck. So it's used art from Salis to make up for it. And there's some interesting designs in here. This hermit looks like a monk, maybe. Fortitude for the strength card. The death card. I think it looks like they have a shovel and a scythe. So watch out, they're coming at you. Temperance. This one is from Virgil Salis, but it cracks me up. I just like it. Check this one out. So this is a tower. You'll see this in some of the older decks where it's like the gateway of hell and this person trying to escape and a devil trying to pull them in or pull them back in. Maybe they were escaping and being led out by this person playing music. Okay, and this is kind of the gem of this deck. It's the pip cards because they are really cool suits. Ella Mortimer has tied the suits to specific things. I don't know if this is how they are used officially. So Ella has the suit of monkeys as clubs. Oh, okay, so these are based on what Virgil Salis said about the German card suits, and then they are being equated to French suits and Italian suits. So the acorns of the German cards are the monkeys, which equate to clubs in French, and batons in Italian. The suit of parrots is cups, hearts. The suit of peacocks is swords or leaves. And then the suit of lions is coins or bells in the German suits. And this was, made in the 1500s with the explore the new world, colonize everything. So it has parrots. Aren't they so fun, though? Here's the page. Knight. Queen. King. They have monkeys. Which the monkeys are often getting into stuff, like messing with people stuff or looking in mirrors. Page, knight, queen, king. We have the lions, which have a lot of human-looking faces or gargoyle-looking faces. So yeah, I kind of went for this deck because I loved how this is an artist Virgil Salis, inspiring the artist Catalin Geoffroy, then inspiring the artist Ella Mortimer to create the deck that we have here. And I love the clever suits, or the unique suits. And then we have peacocks here. I think the peacock suit might be my favorite. So for this one, I have not tried reading with it yet. I have read with the Visconti, and I've read with the Mamluk deck. I have not read with the money-suited cards. And I have not read with this one. I hope y'all don't mind a lengthy video and a, a significant flip through. Maybe not all the cards of all the decks, but that's one of my favorite things about it, is having like an example, and then you can explore the like lore and think about what it might have been like to be someone using the deck in that century. So yeah, that's the Tarot of Geoffroy and Salis from the 1500s. Do I have anything else to say about the 16th century? I don't think so. Okay, on to the 17th century. This next deck is the one that sort of got me into historic decks because it was beautiful. And I was like, okay, you know what? Historic decks are beautiful. Kind of unlocked that for me. Because I was very much like, oh, they just look old, or the art is imperfect or blocky or funny, or dated, obviously. This one really helped my brain turn that around and really appreciate art over the course of history. And this is the Tarocchi Fina dalla Torre. It is a Bolognese deck. And I got this one from the International Museum of Tarot in Italy. And I didn't go to Italy. I ordered it online. But anyway, what do I have to say about this? This deck is from the 1600s. It's estimated to be before 1669 because it contains a Pope card and a Popess card. And for a chunk of time, those were removed from tarot decks, at least in this area. And first it was 2 popes and 2 emperors. Then it was the 4 quote-unquote Moors. And I think there's like ones with 4 emperors. This is an Italian deck. It is it overlaps in time with Marseille. This is the century that Marseille got started, but didn't really take off until the next century, when we will talk about it. But the first surviving Marseille is from 1639. So this deck could be as old or older than that, or it could not be, because again, I just know it's before 1669. And this is, again, a restoration. So you can buy facsimile versions of this. Oh, and look at the backs of these. This is about Cupid giving Apollo an arrow and then chasing, who is it? Daphne, poor Daphne. And Daphne turns into a laurel plant to escape Apollo. So this is the image here. And this one is nearly complete. There were only a couple of cards, I think, that they had to replace. The one thing is, because it's a Bologna deck, this one didn't have 78 cards. It had 62 cards, so they didn't have 2, 3, 4, or 5. So those in here are all created from scratch. They're not recreated from anything. They're just based on the other cards in the deck. So there's that to keep in mind. This is a Page of Cups. Knight of Batons. King of Swords. And as you can see, it's fairly simplistic pips, but still, just beautiful colors. You get the red spots and red designs. This is the world that you see on a lot of Bolognese cards. This is the Queen of Wands. So like, for example, this 3 is not a restoration. It's just a newly created 3 to complete the deck. Which technically doesn't need to be completed, you know, because it was a deck for games with 62 cards. This is Strength. Again, it's the Fortitude Tower or Pillar. I really love the Celestials in here. The Sun card. There's batons, cups, coins, the Knight of Coins. The horses are really zany in this deck. Also, I don't know what's going on with that guy's foot, but like, here's the Ace of Coins, the 10 of Cups. This is the Emperor. You'll also notice that the restorers added the numbers here. Those weren't originally there. Although it definitely helps me remember who's who. So like, this is Justice. And you can kind of see the difference in the like clean lines of the created cards. Here's the Magician. The Devil. The Queen of Cups. This one might be one of the missing cards. Look at the star. Isn't that... I just love it. And then the moon. This one might be my favorite. Look how happy these astronomers are. They're like, look at us measuring stuff. This is awesome. I love staying up late. It's just adorable. And that moon's face is so serene. This deck is just delightful. Here's the Fool. You'll notice they numbered it 22. It's also on that like fun book feeling art paper. And it's large. But I have riffle shuffled this. Maybe all historic deck lovers cringe at that. Okay, so yeah, that's Tarocchi Fina della Torre from Bologna. I love that deck. This is the one that got me into historic decks, got me into pips, got me interested in learning to read Marseille. Marseille, again, was something I wasn't interested in, not because they were pip cards, but because I didn't like the art. So I have then gone on a merry hunt to find Marseille decks that I like. And I have one historic Marseille deck. It is, again, still a restoration / recreation. And that's the next one for the 18th century. So, on to the 1700s we go. The evolution of Marseille, which again, the earliest Marseille deck is from the previous century in 1639. I have this little bitty friend. And I want to jump in here with some honorable mentions as well, because we're talking about the evolution of tarot, but playing cards were evolving in their suits around this time. This particular deck is the Maman Miyuki Tarot. This is a pencil and watercolor tarot that's a recreation of the 1709 Pierre Madinet tarot deck, which you can, again, buy facsimiles of, but I just really enjoyed and preferred this one. I love the colors in it. I love the crisp lines. And the reason I even like this one, the Pierre Madinet, is the faces. They just look gentle. Well, maybe not the sun, but you get the idea. So this is a 1709 deck. But something that's interesting to note is French-suited tarot decks by 1622, again, back in the 17th century, tarot was more popular than chess in France. But it started waning in popularity in the 1650s. In the late 18th century, there was a revival, but no longer with Marseille styles, which were viewed as Italian. We then start seeing the tarot decks, which are known as French-style suits, even though the tarot decks started in Germany. Most notably, Tarot Nouveau. So, I have a couple things here to share. First off, here's German-suited cards. This is Doppelkopf. This is a modern deck that my mom actually got me when she was visiting relatives in Germany. We've got leaves for spades, hearts for hearts. Are these in order? No. Acorns for clubs. And bells. Where are you? Bells for coins. Quite delightful. And Doppelkopf means double head, and it's got double of every card. And you play it with teams, typically. I think I have a couple of YouTube how to play Doppelkopf videos that I have found. I can link those. Instead of pages, they have the Unter, like under, and then they have the Ober, like over. So U's and O's. Here's an Ober. And then they have kings. So yeah, that's German suits. But then we went from German suits to what are called French suits in German tarot decks. So what I have here is a Jeu de Tarot from Fournier.
Editing Josephine here to say, I'm going to, throughout this segment, keep saying tarot decks. And yes, well, these styles of deck are from the tarot style. The deck I'm actually featuring is a French deck. It is Jeu de Tarot, really the game of tarot. It's the French tarot. So please excuse my constant misreferencing this particular deck as a tarot deck. It did evolve from that, but this is really what picked up in France and is now known as French tarot. You can get French tarot apps, etc. So the Jeu de Tarot, based on Tarot Nouveau, also called tarot, the Bourgeoisie Tarot, I think, is a French deck based on the German tarot decks.
And this tarot is based on the Tarot Nouveau that I mentioned. And here we've got your classic suits: hearts, clubs, spades, and diamonds. But you'll notice, and I'm sorry, Marseille, we'll get right back to you in a second. We've got some really interesting majors. Tarot Nouveau is out here depicting urban life and rural life, approximately. There are actually a whole slate of meanings for this deck. And it's based on categories. And I've got my notes here, so give me 1 second. So yeah, we've got an urban representation and a rural representation, and we have themes. So we've got the themes of childhood, youth, maturity, old age, the 4 ages. Then we've got the 4 times of the day, morning, afternoon, evening, and night. We have the 4 elements. We have the 4 leisures, which in this case is dance, shopping, open air, and visual arts. And then we've got the 4 seasons, spring, summer, autumn, winter. So for example, this one here is the season of summer. And again, it's showing urban life and rural life of the bourgeoisie. And then we have the game, the folly of the collective, and the folly of the individual. So, again, I'll link this below, but it's some really fun. Here's a valet. It's some really fun majors, and they have meanings for interpretation. So here's the folly of the individual. We've got the sad clown, and we've got the joker. But this is the magician card if you were trying to equate it with a classic tarot deck. But this is a tarot deck. So like 11 here is the element of water. Which in this case, it just looks like them getting drunk on wine. Not sure how that's the element of water. Here's a cavalier, which is the knight. The dame, the queen. Open air, theme of open air from the 4 leisures, and this is depicting hunting on one side and fishing on the other. Here's a king or a roi. And then here's the fool, also known as l'excuse, the most powerful card in a game of tarot. So yeah, this is just fun. And I wanted to show how at this point in tarot history, there's a bunch of deviations that go off in different places, and you get different suits and different themes and games and styles. I got this Fournier deck on eBay as well. I don't think the company, I think it's an out of print deck, but I got it like for $15 or something. So you can probably find one pretty affordable if you were looking for a Fournier version of Jeu de Tarot or the Tarot Nouveau. So, Marseille starts picking up steam in the previous century that I showed. And because this one is from 1709, it's just around when Marseille is waning in popularity in France. Again, in France in particular. Because these suits are viewed as Italian suits, which it is an Italian suited deck. And so the revival happens with decks like this rather than decks like this, although Marseille styles continue on. And yeah, this one is just absolutely beautiful. Let me know if you want me to do a video on my Marseille studies. I've been doing it with a tarot study buddy. And then I have been writing sort of like a guidebook for myself based on 3 different resources about Marseille. I always love the death card in Marseille where there's crowned characters off with their heads in the death card. Check out this hermit. So yeah, this is Maman Miyuki Tarot, Japanese artist who redid the Pierre Madiney Tarot from 1709. And this is an honorable mention of my only facsimile tarot deck. I only just got it, so I'm still learning about it. This is an Italian deck. It's Bolognese as well. And the reason I wanted to just show this is because, again, we're talking about artists being influenced. But you all might see this and go, that looks familiar. What does that remind me of? And I'll put an image up on the screen. But the Marshmallow Marseille is inspired by this deck, which is the Trieste, Tarot de Trieste by Fabbrica di Angelo Valla from 1790. So this little one is 1709 and this one is 1790. This one is a Marseille deck and this one is an Italian deck from Bologna. Well, it's got the Bolognese dots, but it's from the Trieste area of France. Not France, Italy. Yoy, I'm getting tired too. But yeah, so let me just find the moon card. And then I'm also going to put an image up on the screen of the moon card from Marshmallow Marseille. So it's funny because Marshmallow Marseille is based on not a Marseille deck, but Italian deck. There are a lot of similarities to just like with the 1JJ Swiss, there are similarities to the Marseille style of art here. But this is delightful. This one actually I bought on Abe Books, ABE Books. And it's a German printing of this deck called Lombardische. Der Lombardische Tarot. But if you look up Tarot of Lombardy, it's a different deck. So don't get them confused. That's why I wanted to stress that this one is Tarot de Trieste by Fabbrica di Angelo Valla. Okay. After that lovely exploration, we are going to move on to the 1800s or the 19th century. We've got a ton of surviving historic decks at this point, and so then this is where you can get almost a little bit more picky or choosy about what historic decks you maybe would want to represent that century. Clearly I was being really picky this whole time, but the thing that I really latched onto and really love is the 1JJ Swiss. This particular 1JJ Swiss, though, is a restored / reinterpreted version created by the late Vincent Petizzi, who has a YouTube channel, and I know that he is missed. But he does still, there is still an active Make Playing Cards storefront of his, and that's where I bought this. This is a Protestant deck of cards, so it does not have a Pope or a Popess, and instead features Juno and Jupiter. Although in this case, Vincent also made 2 original cards, a High Priestess and a Hierophant, just for fun, and sort of changed the colors up. This is the century that the French and English occult gained steam. The one J.J. Swiss was first printed between 1831 and 1838, and it actually became popular in the U.S. And you'll hear some folks talk about finding this deck as their intro to tarot before an RWS. And it's on Make Playing Cards linen, so it's slippery, but it's fun to shuffle. And so Vincent recolored, but otherwise didn't modify the art too much, unless there was like an error. So like, there's a couple where there were some missing pieces or like something unusual in the art that he corrected. But I just love the coloration of this version. If you look up the one J.J. Swiss, you can see the very vibrant, bright primary colors it's typically, and this is a little more earth tone. The pips are similar in some ways to Marseille, but they are definitely not Marseille, especially not the cup suit, actually. And then the majors are very decidedly not Marseille majors. I'll say, actually, some of them they look like they have some influence of various Minchiati decks, which we're not even talking about Minchiati today. Again, sort of like how the Fina della Torre is a 62 card deck for different games, so it's modified. Minchiati has additional cards, I think in the 90s, like up to 91 cards or something like that, because it includes astrological symbols, it includes elements, it includes additional virtues, kind of like the Visconti Madrone, actually. Let me find this version's bonus cards. So here is one of the originals, Juno, instead of the High Priestess, aka the Popess, is what would have been here. Here is Vincent's creation. And I just keep them both in. I just love having them both kind of mean different things. And it's really cool to see his modern art, but in the style that blends really well. Here is his Hierophant. I'll set that aside and then we'll find Jupiter in here. Unless we already went past Jupiter. Oh, this devil is really interesting. Look at this person's like very dismayed. Also, that devil is scary tall. I love this moon card with the serenade situation going on. And instead of like a crayfish coming out of the water, it's actually like a decoration on the garden wall there. Okay, here is Jupiter. See how bored he looks with his eagle? He's just like, meh. I don't even care. So then there's also this Hierophant that Vincent created in the style of this deck. So yeah, I just keep them both in. I do read with this deck. Again, it's a Make Playing Cards version, but there's many versions of one J.J. Swiss that you can get at this point. Some vintage ones, some not. Because again, we are now in the 19th century. And we are also entering occult jibber jabber. Something I want to say here before we continue is that I personally, and many others, do not credit the French occult, such as like Atea, with using tarot for divination first. Although there is not evidence that is written of Romani people using tarot, I know that there's evidence for the Romani using many forms of divination, including cards. And it could very well overlap with divination of tarot. Plus, Atea got it from somewhere. And I just want to flag that as we talk about this deck and we give credit to Arthur Waite and all of those kind of things, that, again, who writes the history, right? The colonizers do. And I want to stress that tarot was used as divination by many, and divination in general was often used by folks marginalized or oppressed as a way to survive. And I want to honor that and appreciate that. So I don't give credit to the French occult or the British occult for like being the reason tarot is used for divination today. They definitely have influence, especially because RWS became huge in the US. But yeah, so the 20th century, 1900s, rise of RWS. And here we have, did I put this one in order too? Okay, no, just has the Fool at the top. Here we have the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. This particular version is a recoloring. So the line work is the classic. The calligraphy is classic. But the coloring it's done by Lo Scarabeo. And I just really like the colors and designs, and this is the only version of the RWS that I have. And then it has like a little aged design over it. And I do like that each card has a unique age design, and it's not just like copy paste. It is copy paste on the back, which you can see when you spread the cards out. But when you spread out the fronts, they are not that way. So yeah, this one's really pretty. I love to use it in the winter. And I think anyone watching a tarot history video has probably seen this deck. So I'm just going to flip through a few of them. And I want to say here and now, Pamela Coleman Smith, whilst definitely dealing with sexism and not given credit for her art in the long term, is not a person of color, and indeed had a persona that is reminiscent of a Roma person in brownface that she did. So I don't want that whitewashed history, I guess, is it? I don't really know what it's called. It's like hero worship almost, where everyone sort of hypothesizes or expands Pixie to better fit what they would like her to be. She lived in Jamaica as a colonizer for a while. Her art is very beautiful, but it does have those values of colonization and white supremacy. Like this one, for example, especially, and then a lot of the wand suit, actually. It doesn't stop me from using this deck, and it also doesn't stop me from making sure that people know Pamela Coleman Smith is the artist, because I want to make sure she gets credit for that rather than Arthur Waite or the writer-publisher. I think the Hermit is maybe my favorite in her deck. Yeah, see, this one's very like Columbus-y. Got the globe in my hand. Where can I take over next? But yeah, I just want us to keep our history real. And this is the well-known and beloved RWS. And this is my favorite version of it. Like, look how just like adorable the Fool's outfit is in this color palette. I love it. So that one is our 20th century deck. And although we have many, many gorgeous, amazing tarot decks, this one is the one that is enduring in system and it is enduring in style. Like when you talk about tarot clones, usually it's a clone of this deck. So, as we wrap up the centuries, I want to talk about the 21st century, our century. And I've got two decks here. One a little out of reach. And I have a clone of the RWS and a clone of the CBD version of Marseille. There isn't like an official, quote unquote, definitive Marseille deck. There's type 1 and type 2 Marseilles. This one is based on, I think, Bendov's, but it's a party scene. And I freaking love the pips in this one. Each one has a different flower, and then the flower's symbolism and meaning play into the deck. And then I really love this one. Again, it's just a modern take. This particular edition is the German edition because it's way better card stock. Also, what the heck's going on with Liminal 11? Is it bankrupt? They need to pay their artists because they're not doing that. So this one is not published by them. It is published by Königswerk Urania. So yeah. It's a clone. At least I call it a clone. Honestly, this is a clone, right? Because it's a recoloring. It's not like a facsimile deck. But this one is the same design on each card, but with modern characters, modern colors, modern clothes. It's one of my favorites. I like to use it in the springtime just because of the teals and it leans femme. The artist in the book talks about it being sort of a femme / a neutral deck to be inclusive of non-binary folks and those who are just underrepresented. Obviously, there could be improvements. There are a few older characters. I think actually Cozy Witch does it better of showing like older characters and characters with disabilities and stuff. But inclusion is not the same thing as equity or proper representation. But for a clone, ooh, and I love the red wings on this Temperance. And the art, the clothes. Everyone's got such great style in this deck. Speaking of style, let's take a look at this one now. So yeah, 21st century has this explosion in tarot art that we get to appreciate today. And there aren't a ton of like modern Marseille clone-ish decks like this. Oh, wait. I am doing a deck study with this, so it is in a specific order. So I'm going to do this so as not mess it up. Rosario Salerno is the artist. There's them. They added themselves into the deck. As you can see, the pips are just breathtaking. I first saw this in I think it was the So You Think Marseille Decks Are Ugly by Kelly Bear, and yes, I did. And then I found this one. And that also, I was still on the hunt for a historic Marseille that I liked, though, which I found through the Mama Miyuki version of the 1709 Pierre Madnay. And this was what I mean by party scene clothes. as described in the little guidebook, the artist is, let's see, they live and work between Berlin, Germany, and Italy, two places that have deeply inspired this project. So it says the LGBTQ plus party scene. Obviously, I would want to add, although this is, a specific party scene, but I would say two spirits, so 2S LGBTQIA plus. But yeah, so it's based on a certain party scene. Oh, here's the Fool. Le Battleur, the magician. Oh wait, where's the moon card? The moon card's really cool in this deck. Look at that punk face and the moon. And I am partial to flowered decks on flowers as far as oracles and stuff go. So I love having a deck with an extra layer of floral interpretation, especially a pip deck. This, I believe, is currently out of print. It may not stay that way. I bought this one on eBay used. Okay. Last but not least, I know you're like, please just be done already. I want to show, because we looked at some historic playing card-esque decks, more so, especially because, remember, the Scene 1 cards, wait, I still actually have those out. These cute little cards are not tarot decks, but they are playing cards that influence the history and evolution of tarot. So we went from here. And then I have a deck from Usi. This is Pagan Playing Cards. This is the Ivory Edition, which recently has been reprinted. So if you were like, I really am hankering for this because it has different courts. Let me find some examples. They are selling it right now, so go take a look. I think the jokers are different, but yeah, so we went from these to these many centuries later. And it's just lovely to see playing cards enduring. It makes sense, right? People need a portable way to connect, play games, do things communally. And you can do that on your phone nowadays. I know that I have a French tarot app, but I get my butt kicked. I don't know how to play it. I try. I just immediately get defeated. It's got a steep learning curve, that game. But I'm just appreciative to have something in my hand that has lasted and evolved so long, along with humanity as we continue to evolve. And we continue to see that evolution across many countries today, as well as the collision of other really cool types of decks. So, for example, this is the Hanafuda deck I mentioned earlier, and it has French suits as well as Hanafuda, which means flower cards, overlapping, and that's why it's called Sensu Fusion, because it's a Hanafuda poker deck. And this is the Mystical Loteria, which is an oracle version of Loteria cards, which is typically played in the style of sort of like a bingo game. There's just so much to love and learn about playing cards. I hope you enjoyed this very meandering walk through the centuries on tarot history. and appreciate how far we have gone, how far we have come, where we have explored, how art has evolved, and I hope our appreciation for all of those centuries can be found through how it's influenced our art now. Thanks so much for watching. Feel free to ask questions in the comments, offer corrections, like I said, and I will do my best to add all the resources I can in the description box, but if there's anything you still want or is missing, please let me know, and I will do my best to add that or to share something in the comments on where to learn more. Take care.